podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and The Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Our final guest on our Memories of the Ashes series is Kathryn Leng, an England Test centurion and a regular on the Paddock and the Pavilion. Kathryn is joined in this episode by young Rosa Simkin of Rosa Talks Ball. Let's hear Kathryn's Ashes memories, which go back to 1998, the very beginning of the women's Ashes, as you will shortly find out. Kathryn adds her personal tribute to fellow Yorkie Catherine Brunt, as well as answering questions about herself in our Ashes quiz. Can she beat Rick McCosker? Let's find out. Hello, Kathryn and Rosa. Welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the invite.
How are you both?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good. Rosa, you've been doing some exams and you've got a bad knee.
Yeah, I have. But we're getting there with both those things. Got 2 exams left. Probably will be finished when this goes out. So nearly there. Really close.
But you've been following the women's cricket very closely, haven't you?
Yes, I have, especially the Charlotte Edwards Cup and Rachel Hofant Trophy.
Well, don't tell all the teachers that. Kathryn, have you been playing cricket?
I have. They've wheeled me out in my wheelchair and I've played 2 or 3 games. So, yeah, it's been good. It's a local Premier Sussex League, little T20s, which is a format that I've not really played a lot since, sort of like the under-15s at Putsey St Lawrence back in the day. But yeah, I found the game again. Rather than sit on the sideline and watch it with a beer, I'm actually amongst it for once.
A friend of mine, Colin Nuttall, a mutual friend of ours, Colin Nuttall, asked me to ask how your cricket was going.
Good. It's not doing too bad. Been scoring a few runs and it's coming off the bat quite nicely. So what more can you ask for? More runs than him.
More runs than Colin, yes. Yeah. But we're going to talk in this podcast about Kathryn's memories of the Ashes. You're also going to give a tribute to someone you know quite well in Catherine Brunt. And you don't know this yet, Kathryn, but there is a quiz about your Test matches against Australia.
Do you
You're
know
shaking
what?
your head there.
I'm really good at quizzes, but I just think I'm not going to do very well in this about myself. It was the last thing I said before I came onto this meeting is that I hope they don't ask me too much about myself because, it was a long time ago, 1998.
Yeah, it was, especially for Rosa, it is a long time ago. It's not for me. But I wanted to begin, Kathryn, and this is a long time ago. What was your earliest England versus Australia memory? It won't be an Ashes memory as such, women's Ashes, but...
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate to have been born in God's own country. So one of my first memories was a Cornhill Test, if anyone remembers those on the BBC.
I do. Yeah.
And the mighty Titan, Ian Botham, 1981 at Headingley.
81.
I remember that. I remember watching that match on the TV. And if there's anyone out there who hasn't seen it from start to finish, then, it's got everything, as well as us beating the Aussies, of course, which I'd quite like to see.
It's a long time ago for you, Rosa, 1981.
Yeah, I have to say I don't remember that one, but I will have to watch it back at some point.
You really should, and you see funny little things in it, like these little blue cars that they used to have parked on the grounds for the disabled spectators and what have you, and you just see all this stuff. It's that Headingley back in the day, and then you see it now. But the match itself is just unbelievable, and as well as some of the moustaches.
Kathryn, you made your Ashes or your debut against Australia in a Test match in 1998. Before that, had you watched any England-Australia women's Test matches?
Yes, I had. I'd seen a day's cricket, and it was sort of like back in the day, and I overlapped this a little bit when the women played at leading club grounds. So there was a club in Yorkshire called Collingham. There used to be quite a bit of women's cricket there, and I saw the Australians play there. Yeah, and they were pretty good.
Well, you played 12 Test matches, 4 of them against Australia. And in our conversation, we're going to focus on a couple of those matches. Just for your information, Rosa, Kathryn averaged 27 and got 3 wickets. We won't mention the average at 63. Best figures of 2 for 5. But how different was it playing Test matches against Australia, Kathryn, than playing against India and New Zealand?
Yeah, and I mean, it was completely different. I think I played one home series and one away series. The away series, we actually played at Test venues, so we played at the Gabba, Brisbane and Sydney. But yeah, it was a totally different game, but just competitive. Every ball was competitive. Just maybe because of the England-Australia rivalry, I don't know. But the Test matches that I did play in, I think I can honestly say at some point we were in with a chance without a doubt, really. I didn't think they were going to run away with the game. Whereas when we played them in the one-day internationals, we were completely thrashed. It was embarrassing at one point. But certainly, the Test matches I played in, there were points when the game could have turned. So really good experience for me. And I suppose that was the type of cricket that I really wanted to play.
Well, we spoke off air that England first played Australia in Test cricket in 1934, and they weren't actually known as the Ashes until 1998. Test that you played in. Were you aware that they were then called the Ashes?
Yeah, I mean there was a ceremony, so they wanted the Women's Cricket Association stroke ECB at the time in '98 wanted something significant to do to sort of like kickstart. This is the women's Ashes. The men have got their Ashes. We're going to have ours. So someone came up with the idea of we all signed a miniature cricket bat, and they burned this cricket bat in what I can remember was a walk in the Lord's Memorial Garden, and we all sort of stood around and watched that. And there were quite a few newspapers around, and the TV was there, and there is a bit of footage, I think, somewhere. So yeah, they burned the women's Ashes essentially. Is a burnt miniature cricket bat with all our signatures on.
So you were there in the Lord's garden then?
Yeah, it was a bit. I suppose I didn't really think it was that significant at the time, but when I look back and I've seen it shown on TV, I was like, oh, actually, I was there. That's quite cool.
You said that you felt like you had a chance in Test cricket against the Aussies and not an ODI. Would you say Test cricket was your favourite format to play and watch, or just to play?
I think play, really. And I've said this in previous podcasts that in a Test match, I feel that you've got everything. You've got every format, and a couple of balls can swing the game the other way. And I do. I just a lot of people will say 4 days is a long time, but when you're playing it, it really doesn't feel like that. Apart from at the end of the night when your feet are hurting a bit, but yeah, it's really you're engrossed all the time, and sometimes you need to teach yourself to be able to switch on and switch off. which, you know, you don't get that in sort of like the 2020 and 40 over format. So, you know, the more you hear me talk about it, the more passionate I get about Test cricket, but it's a really great format to play.
Cool. You did play, for Rosa's information, 56 ODIs, 12 of them against Australia. You were talking about having sore feet. I think there was lots of sore feet in your Test debut at Guildford in August 1998. England batted first and got 414 in 189 overs, and then Australia replied with 569 for 6. And in this exciting game, England then batted again and were 160 for 1 when the match was drawn. What are your recollections, Kathryn, apart from having sore feet?
Yeah, good venue for women's cricket to play at. I remember that day it was a debut of a young girl called Charlotte Edwards, who had turned up the night before. We'd all met up the night before, I think, and no one sort of like knew we had two debutantes of. So there was this little girl, Charlotte Edwards, and then Lucy Pearson, the fierce left arm bowler. I remember that, and she batted very well. I remember them at the beginning of the innings, sitting her. Some of the newspapers were there. They sat her on a chair and took pictures of her. 5 minutes later, she was out batting, facing Catherine Fitzpatrick. So, you know, a lot different to how you prepare for a Test match nowadays, I think. But like I said, it was a really good venue for us, and I remember the grounds. You know, you always go up to the groundsman and say, you know, how's the pitch playing? And he said, I was with the late great Janet Britton at the time. We'd gone out to look at the wicket, and the groundsman said, yeah, it keeps low at one end and it keeps bouncy at the other end. And Jeanette Britton said, do I really need to wear a helmet? And the groundsman was like, well, I can't tell you either way, but maybe. So they went into bat, and I think it was a second ball. Catherine Fitzpatrick absolutely pounded this ball into Jeanette Britton. It hit her on the helmet and went for 4. And she sort of like tapped her head as if to say, I'm glad I wore that. It had completely knocked her out, I think.
Well, Charlotte Edwards was only 18 when she was playing that match.
Yeah. But, you know, deserved to be there because she'd been scoring runs, you know, from an early age, really, in senior women's cricket. So, yeah, they chucked her straight into the deep end. But to be batting with someone like Jeanette Britton, you know, all you need to do really is keep one end going and watch her fly. She got 100, you know, and Lottie Eberle assisted her in that, and you know, we posted a cracking score. It was just a bit slow.
Yeah, Janet Britton got 146 and Charlotte Edwards got 53, and England scored 414 all out. What a thrill, though, for you to play in a Test match for England. Yeah,
it really was, and to get a little bat and score a few runs, not as much as that, but yeah, it was good. It was good, but obviously, you know, it was a draw. We kind of made it a draw, I suppose, batting for 180 overs.
A bigger thrill even next Test when you were playing in Yorkshire at Harrogate.
Yeah, and that was something really special because I'd played a Test in '96 at Scarborough against New Zealand. That was on another podcast, but so to play at Harrogate was something special because it was a, you know, sort of like Yorkshire county outground at the time. And again, I think from what I recollect, did we fall few short, about 100 short or something. And then the rain came. But
Australia scored 306 for 3 declared. England replied with 326 for 8 declared, with Janet Britton making 167. And then Australia were 303 for 5, and England then 64 for no wicket.
Oh, no. I think I'm mistaken there, but it's certainly... I remember I got promoted to open the batting with Lottie in the second innings, and we were finding it really easy. And then I think the rain came, and we were sort of like, oh, that spoiled our fun a little bit. But we had, it was like 4 seasons in one day there. The weather scuppered us a little bit.
Just for Rosa's information, Kathryn, I know we want to mention it again. You mentioned about playing at Scarborough against New Zealand. Rosa, that's when Kathryn scored 144. Thought I'd get that in a test match.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
Kathryn, your other 2 test matches against Australia were on an England tour of Australia in 2002-03. What was it like going on tour to Australia? You must have had a very understanding employer.
I think at that time I'd actually given up work, and I'd decided to study because I left school and went straight into working. So I felt at this time, the cricket was really taking off. So I sort of couldn't get any further. I worked in a bank. I couldn't really get any further up the ladder because I kept going on tour. So I decided that I'd go to university, which obviously allowed me to play more, which is all I really wanted to do. And how lucky to go on a tour to Australia.
Did you play many tour matches? You played 2 test matches.
Yeah, I think we played one tour match. It could have been in Sydney, where I think a very young Lydia Greenway made a debut, and literally she'd been on an under-19 tour, and someone had been injured, so they called her up, and she flew out to Australia, got off the plane with her bag, straight to the ground, got a kit on, and actually played very well. But yeah, that was a tour match. I don't think we did particularly well in that. But then we got to play at the Gabba and Sydney, which the SCG, which was chance of a lifetime, really.
You opened the batting in both the 2 test matches, and actually Charlotte Edwards was batting 3. But the Brisbane test, the first test, the scores are quite interesting. Hopefully you'll remember something about this game. England batted first and got 124. We bowled Australia out for 78. England then were bowled out for 92. But Australia then got the target, losing 5 wickets. An extraordinary match. This is what I was just saying to Rosa earlier, that was a real absolute roller coaster of a game, because we, myself and Sarah, had gone into bat in a really empty stadium where everything echoed because there was probably about 10 people watching. There was the biggest crack I've ever seen in my life in the wicket. The wicket was awful. And myself and Sarah sort of like went into bat like the sacrificial lambs, with a really quick Catherine Fitzpatrick coming steaming in, and I think 5 slips at one point, because she was just trying to land it on the crack in the wicket all the time. And we managed to muster a few runs there. And I remember Mel Jones coming up to me and going, am I allowed to swear in this? I won't. She said something along the lines of, "You lot are rubbish. You're only batting at 1.1 and over. Where's the fun in that?" And then they came into bat
in their innings and we're all out for 80. So we were kind of like, sorry, what were you saying, Mel? It was they got a real shock at how difficult it was to bat on there. And yeah, we managed to rattle through them.
England scored 124. That was in 108 overs. And one of the England opening batsmen, Kathryn Leng, was LBW for 26 and batted for 165 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't out. I was just getting into my stride then. No, I mean, I think now I think about it, I think 3 of us got triggered LB. If you look at the score, 3 or 4 all of a sudden they began to discover the LBW rule. I think because maybe it was that slow.
Rosa, it's amazing how people have got good memories when they they think they've been they've had some dubious decisions, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had lots. No, I think the umpires played a good 12th and 13th man in that first innings. But yeah, I think we then, in the second innings, I think myself and Sarah put a few on. And we had a massive collapse. So we sort of threw it away, and that was one of those moments when we really had them on, we had them on the run, really, which is a really nice feeling. And then I think in their innings, Belinda Clark and Karen Rolton steadied it. But I remember Rolton giving a few chances away. It wasn't a particularly good innings for her. And then all of a sudden they had a bit of a collapse, and we thought we were back in with a chance, even though I think they needed 20 or 30 odd. We still kept fighting, which, when you play in a test match, you just have to keep believing sometimes, because you can get 2 or 3 quick wickets. And like I said, it can completely turn the game the other way.
It was a 2-test series. England lost the Ashes then 1-0. You were playing against some legends of the game during your period of those 4 test matches.
Yeah, I've mentioned her quite a few times. Cathryn Fitzpatrick was just quick and bouncy. But just, I think sometimes we were just sent in to sort of like take the shine off the ball. If I remember the bruises I got when I opened the batting at the Gabba, I was just black and blue because it was cutting everywhere and bouncing. But, to play against someone like Belinda Clark, who, there'll never be anyone like her ever again. And she's gone on to be one of the great pioneers of women's cricket, not just in Australia, but around the world. Obviously, Claire Connor was playing for us. I think she was captain at the time. We just call her Mrs. Women's Cricket, really, because, Claire's taken those times and taken them into, professional times, and she's worked really hard to do that. So the list is endless, really. Karen Rolton, I think when we played in that 98 Ashes series, they played 3 or 4 warm-up games against various teams, and I think she broke about 4 or 5 fingers because she hit the ball so hard. Obviously there was Mel Jones in that side. I think she made her debut maybe that in 98. She was a great player. Yeah, the list is endless, really.
You also had Lisa Keightley, a previous guest on this podcast, playing against you as well.
Yeah, she's not a bad player on her day.
Another player who wasn't a bad player, who I know you know from your Yorkshire roots, is Catherine Brunt, who has now retired from international cricket. And as someone who I think played with her in her very early days, I mean, Catherine had an international career of 19 years. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on her cricketing career.
Well, it's been fabulous, really, because I've been able to see it right from when she was a nipper, basically, playing for Sheffield United. I played for Wakefield Ladies at the time. And she won't mind me saying that in her younger days, she was a little bit overweight. She was a bit, grumpy if things didn't go her way. And it's been just an absolute delight to see how she's grown into this absolute world-class cricketer with the help and support of so many people when, there was a talent there and someone's got her on the side of the pitch and coached her and made her into this not only fabulous cricketer but a great character as well. And I think even though we might see her a little bit on the cricket pitch in various franchises, I think there's probably a career outside of cricket for her. So I'd probably like to predict a Strictly Come Dancing or an I'm a Celebrity stint at some point in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, that's interesting. I'm going to ask Rosa to ask you a question, but I just wanted to give a bit of detail of her sort of records, really. She played 14 test matches, which is quite a lot. She got 51 test wickets, played 141 ODIs, 170 wickets, and 112 T20s with 114 wickets.
Yeah, and she's played, she's played that era of, I think she played for 10 years where she wasn't professional, and she's played the other 9 or 10 as a professional. So she's alongside probably Heather Knight, they're kind of like the last men standing, really, of that era. And I know she thinks about those early days really fondly and is a great person to be able to, weigh one up against the other.
Yeah, she won the Ashes, she won the World Cup at 20 overs and 50 overs. Over to you, Rosa.
Now, what do you think made her so good? This is quite a big question, but she's a very unique player. And what do you think gave her that edge?
I think no one will disagree with me that she's got so much passion and heart that she wills herself. She'll go through any pain to get that last wicket or get that last run. She wants to win. That's her mentality, and I think it's being instilled in her at an early age, and that's just how she is. She's made a couple of comebacks where physically she's not been very in good shape, and she's made herself in good shape. She's just had that determination and that confidence in herself that she can do it as well. I feel like she's really unique.
I mean, I have to say that there's not many characters like her out there. Like, her unrivaled passion is quite something, and it's definitely what gave her such a long career.
Yeah, you just want to get a little bit of it and bottle it, don't you? And hand it out a little bit to everyone, because she's just got it. And like I said, I think there's a lot more to come from her, not necessarily on the cricket pitch, but in other avenues, because she's got that bubbly personality.
Remember, you can follow the Paddock and the Pavilion on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Pad and Pav. Kathryn, now it's time for your quiz about yourself. You're not in the black chair.
Thank goodness, because it'd make me extra nervous if that was the case.
And no passes allowed.
Okay.
What was the date of your Ashes Test debut? It is in August. It's the date, not the day of the week.
It's 98.
Yeah.
I know it's August because it was really hot at Guildford, and I'm gonna go 6th of August.
6th of August. That's correct. Yeah.
Whoa.
Right. Here's the next question. I'm glad you didn't mention it when you were talking about your Test debut, but how many did you score on your Ashes Test debut at Guildford?
I think there are a few of us that were in the 30s, so I'm going to say 34.
34, that's correct. And that was off 74 balls in 99 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the next question. Who took the most wickets for England on your Ashes Test debut when the Australians got 5, 6, 9 for 6?
Oh.
England used 8 bowlers. Your figures were 0 for 61. Sue Redfern, I'm giving another answer away there. She was 0 for 85. So it's not one of those two.
No. I'm going to say Karen Smithies.
No, Charlotte Edwards with 2 for 79.
What? With their Tommy Trundlers?
Right, next question. And you should get this one right. Who made her England debut in your first Ashes Test in Australia?
Lydia Greenway.
I knew you were going to get that one right.
Yeah.
And the last question is two answers for this. Who opened England's bowling in your last Ashes Test? It was also your last Test match in Sydney.
Lucy Pearson.
And two bowlers opened the bowling.
I'm going to go Claire Taylor.
No, Laura Harper.
Oh.
So I think you scored 4.
I got 3, so I'm pretty happy with myself for that.
That's awesome. Well done. Goodness me. That's really good.
I think your score was, I think Rick got 4, so I think you're the joint winner of the memories of the Ashes quiz.
Yeah. You see, I knew my own stuff, didn't I? But I know Lucy Pearson just got loads of wickets in that last Test match, and in the first innings, Olivia Marno, who was the leggy for Australia who didn't play in that game, came up to me and said, "Oh, I did tell them that the pitch should be taking spin in the first innings," and I was like, "Oh, now you tell me." But Lucy Pearson cleared up anyway with like 7 wickets or something, so it was all right.
You're not going to get any extra bonus points for that. So your final score is 4.
I bet Rick couldn't tell you a gem like that, though.
Probably not. But I don't know. He's very good, Rick. Nothing left really for us on the Paddock and the Pavilion, but to thank my 2 guests, Kathryn Leng, for remembering her Test career. 4 tests, 12 tests in total, but 4 of them against Australia. Also for jointly winning the quiz. Did we get 4 or 5? I've lost count now. How many you got right?
I think it might have been 5.5.
4. Rosa's putting 4 fingers up, so looks like you've drawn with Rick McCosker.
I was never good at maths.
Yeah, and thank you also, Rosa, for your expert knowledge of the women's game, and thank you both for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Sports Social Podcast Network.